in this press conference. We have a number of speakers that are going to be sharing, including our governor on this afternoon. We're going to try to be good stewards of your time, get you in and out. But while you're here, make sure you're clued in, plugged in, paying good attention, because we want to leave here motivated and ready to go out and defeat this amendment. And so I'm excited to be here, and again, just to welcome you all here. I'm drawn to this fight, this contest, this battle of wills, if you will, because for me, this is a moral crisis on so many levels. It's a money grab at best. We always say follow the money. This is a great case to follow the money and find out what's really going on. The courts have stood to maintain the commitment of Kentuckians to education over the years on more than one occasion. But now we see an end run being sought, engaged by those on the other side of this debate, which again is, in my opinion, a moral dilemma. If we are concerned about all of our kids, this is a no-brainer. If it's a selfish thing, then that's what brings us here to put up a fight and say we're not having it. We're not going to allow this to happen. And so as a person in this community, as a taxpaying citizen, as a pastor, one who's concerned about all of the people, I cannot help but personally stand over against this amendment. And so, again, you'll hear some words of inspiration from a number of people today, beginning with a young man that I met a few weeks ago by the name of Sawyer. So if you would make your way up here, I told him then, and I believe with all my heart, he's going to be an elected official somewhere soon. But he has some great words to share with us. All right.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for having me here. Like the Reverend said, my name is Sawyer No. I'm a freshman at the University of Kentucky, and I've been asked to offer a student's perspective on Amendment 2 this afternoon. Now, as the product of not just public education, but 3 generations of public school teachers, I've always understood the importance of our public schools as the one true equalizer remaining in our society. And if y'all can't tell by the accent, I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Rocky knows. And there you learn early that public schools are so often, for far too many, the one and only catalyst to a successful and purposeful life. And in traveling Kentucky this summer speaking on this issue, I learned that people in every corner of our Commonwealth realize that too. In Kentucky, we believe that if you work hard enough and you dream big enough, if you put in those early mornings and give up those late nights, if you play by the rules and never lose sight of your ambition, then you have a right to succeed. As Kentuckians, we believe that every child, from the streets of West Louisville to the hollers of Appalachia, deserves the opportunity to escape their background and build a brighter future for themselves and their families. Unfortunately, not all of our leaders in Frankfort share these values with us. This November, one of the most horrific and heinous attacks levied against our public schools will be on the ballot. The adoption of the voucher amendment would strip our public schools of so many important resources and would be diverted entirely to privately owned, and make no mistake about this, unaccountable institutions. Now, over the next 3 weeks, advocates for this amendment are going to come to your doors, mail you flyers, publish articles, and televise ads trying to convince you that Amendment 2 will expand opportunities for all students. In reality, what this amendment would actually do is offer a discount to the wealthiest Kentuckians, many of which already send their students to private schools, at the expense of public schools that are already struggling. I've said so many times, we're not only being asked to allow our tax dollars to subsidize a private education for the select few, but we're being asked to do so at a time where these same leaders have denied critical funding to our public schools. We're having to increase class sizes, rely on technology that is long out of date, and cut services that are essential to so many students, from after-school care to quality transportation service. Folks, this November, we cannot afford to be complacent. It is incumbent upon all of us to rally together and defeat this amendment. Now, like I said, I was meant to offer a student perspective on this issue. So here it is. We're counting on y'all. This issue is too important for us to allow the opposition to have their way. My age group is finally coming of age where we can be a part of the democratic process, make these decisions with you, and have our voices heard, but we can't do it alone. We need you all, and students just like myself if they're old enough, to rally together and show out in numbers on or before November 5th to vote no on this dangerous amendment. We also need to be getting with our friends, our family members, co-workers, neighbors, and anybody you know to let them know to vote against Amendment 2. This issue is too important. And together, we will protect our schools and foster a better future for not just the select few, but for all students that call this Commonwealth home. Thank y'all.
At this time, we'll hear from Randi Weingarten.
Sawyer tall. Randi short. But we play for the same team, which is, my name is Randi Weingarten. I am the president of the AFT, and I am 11th and 12th grade AP Gov teacher who taught in a career tech ed school in Brooklyn, New York, still on leave from my teaching to do this profound job representing our kids, our educators, our healthcare workers, and people who make a difference in the country. And I am really honored to be in Kentucky and to be with all of you and to be with our governor and this great pastor in this great church. Because what this says, particularly having this press conference here, is that Kentucky is a community. And Kentucky understands from its founders, remember, I'm a social studies teacher. Kentucky understands from its founders, if you look at Kentucky's Constitution, the importance of public education. It has one of the strongest provisions about the importance of public education as a way of kids being able to dream their dreams and achieve them in the United States of America. And the people who want this constitutional amendment want to kill that, want to undermine that. And they're selling people a pig and a poke. Because we have the evidence already from the places which have had these kind of amendments or these kind of voucher schemes. Number one, what they actually do is defund the public schools. The very schools that 90% of the parents in Kentucky send their kids to. They defund things like sports. They defund things like clubs. They actually increase school size and classroom size. They defund the programs that kids really want and need, like career tech ed, like social studies, like projects, like sports. Number two, who actually uses these vouchers? Again, we know this from evidence, from Arizona, from Florida. It's the people who already send their kids to private schools. And in fact, many private schools in the country have raised their tuition. So 70% of the people who actually use these vouchers in other states already send their kids to private schools. And the other kids that go, we already have evidence from other places that they do worse in these places because they are unaccountable. Just taking taxpayer money. So I'm here to say to Kentucky, if we want to have that Kentucky culture of public schooling being the equalizer for all kids, we need to vote no on Amendment 2. Thank you.
We thank President Weingarten and her passion for this issue, and so we're excited about her being here with us today. At this time, we'll hear from Josh Cowan.
Hey, everybody. I'm a professor at Michigan State University. I spent the first 5 years of my career over at the Martin School at the University of Kentucky teaching there. It's a really important state to me. My only son was born here. I wish I were back here under happier circumstances, but I have been studying voucher schemes like what Amendment 2 would push forward for almost 20 years now at this point. I've written a book on this called The Privateers. It's out in bookstores right now. But I want to just reiterate three quick things that Randy said, and then turn it back over. Really excited to hear from the governor here. The data. So why am I here? I have been traveling to state after state after state talking about this issue because 24 states have been passing or expanding voucher schemes in the last 3 years. I wish I could tell you this was just a fight going on here, but we are seeing this all over the country. And we know, though, the only upside of that is we know what these things do once they come to town. So the data say vouchers will defund public schools here. Absolutely. That's number one. Number two, they absolutely devastate student learning. Okay? And number three, they discriminate against vulnerable kids and families. 70% of voucher students are already in private school to begin with, before taxpayers picked up the check. For that 30% or so of kids who do transfer from a public school, we see this just across the river in Ohio and Indiana. Some of the worst learning loss as measured by test scores ever seen on any measure in the history of education research. You have to go to something like what the COVID-19 pandemic did more recently to get at the magnitude of the drops that these kids suffer. I call vouchers the education equivalent of predatory lending for that reason. And the reason for that is that the elite private schools, and there are many of them, they don't take vouchers for the most part. The schools that have room, the schools that are sort of soliciting themselves to these kids to come out of those public schools, they're what I call subprime schools. They're not any good, to be honest with you, at least not on the academic measures that we would traditionally have and that public schools are held accountable for. And that's why we see those drops. But elite school or subprime school, the catch here is, and this is where the discrimination piece comes in, the catch here is that when it comes to vouchers, it isn't the school choice at all. It's the school's choice. The schools are doing the choosing. That means on any measure you want. And the big thing that happens, we see kids with disabilities in particular getting turned away. Or almost as worse, their parents being told by these schools, come on in, we can take you. We're not going to be on the hook for that IEP. We don't want anything written down, but trust us, we'll make it work. And then what happens is they don't. 30% of kids who do come to a voucher school from a public school end up leaving within the first couple of years again, either because they're pushed out, asked to leave, or they just can't make it work for them. So those are the three things that I want to tell you the data say from the state after state after state after watching this thing for 20 years. Vouchers defund public schools, they discriminate against vulnerable kids and families, and they just devastate student learning. That's what I have for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh, for sharing as well. Our next speaker, I think everybody in the room knows already. But before he comes, let me say this. You know, it must be difficult getting up every morning, know there's a supermajority actively working against you. But he has endurance. He has proven that day in and day out. We are glad that he is here. And so without further ado, our Governor Beshear, will come and share his thoughts with us on today.
Well, Pastor Gaines, I'd take you standing by my side any day, even over that supermajority. I'd invite our legislators who are here, if you want to join me up here, please do. And any of our friends in labor or any of our Fayette County, Kentucky teachers, we'd love to have you too. I figured y'all didn't want to sit the whole time. I am excited to be in Fayette County today because myself, my brother, and my mom are all Fayette County public school graduates. My dad is a Dawson Springs Independent public school graduate. My kids will be Frankfort Independent public school graduates, and through their public schools get an associate's degree at Kentucky State University. That's what our public schools are providing right now. I am here today to ask all of the voters in Kentucky to vote against Amendment 2. It is very simple. Amendment 2 would allow Frankfort politicians to take taxpayer money away from public schools and send it to unaccountable private schools. Let me tell you, the people of Kentucky do not want that. And when they are educated on what this amendment will actually do, they will vote against it as many times as you'll let them. Again, this is nothing more than a power grab. This is nothing more than a money grab. These are significant funds going into public school systems all over the state that private corporations or others want a piece of. But you know what we teach in our public schools? We teach math. And in math, we teach subtraction. And so if we have a certain amount of money going to our public schools, and this amendment allows those supermajority to take some of that money and send it to private schools, our public schools have less. They have less money for raises. They have less money for resources for our students. They have less to do everything that we ask them to do that right now we're asking them to do better. Right now, we starve our public schools based on the funding they actually need, yet the supermajority wants to send some of those scraps to private schools and hurt them even more. I want to take a minute to address especially our rural school systems. Listen, most parts of Kentucky don't have private schools. The public school system is the only school system and the largest employer in most of those counties. If Amendment 2 passes, you will see dollars move from rural Kentucky school systems into unaccountable urban private schools. Areas that are experiencing depopulation that we are investing in more and more and more, where the CTEs at those public schools are the jobs magnet that are going to bring in those future employers, are going to have less money for that nursing program where we have a shortage in all parts of Kentucky and there are good jobs. Less money for the skilled trades that are being taught there right now where we have those good jobs. And less money for those robotics programs that are winning competitions across the state, across the nation, and across the world. The innovation going on in our public school systems, especially in our rural public school systems, will suffer if Amendment 2 passes. And you don't have to read very far to know that those trying to get you to vote yes on Amendment 2 aren't telling you the truth. So I want to address at least 3 pieces of misinformation, disinformation. There are a lot of words for that, for not telling the truth these days, that should tell everybody that the yes folks aren't being honest with them. First, I've seen on some of their mailers that this will somehow give me, Andy Beshear, more options, suggesting I'm for it. Let me be clear. I'm fully opposed to Amendment 2. I'm going to vote no against Amendment 2, and I'm going to do everything I can to defeat it. The second thing that's said on there is that supporting Amendment 2 will somehow increase public school teacher pay. But again, that fails math and subtraction, because if our public schools have a certain amount right now, which isn't enough for the teacher raises that we tried to mandate, and you take some of that money away, you have less. And we will see fewer raises, and it'll be that much harder on the schools. And finally, you now hear this argument, well, Amendment 2 doesn't make any policy decision. that it's not going to, in and of itself, send money to private schools or defund public schools. What was it, about 3 sessions ago, that they tried to pass the charter school bill and the charter school funding? But they were told that the Constitution prevents them from doing so. Then they come back and attempted to pass a tax credit that could go to private schools, but they were told the Constitution didn't allow them to do it. So what are they trying to do now? They're trying to change the Constitution. And it doesn't take much to figure out why. It's so that they can pass those bills, defund public education, and send those dollars to private schools. These are things that we all know. Yet the yes folks aren't being honest about in the things they're sending out to voters. But I believe that most voters out there know a public school educator. Most voters out there have kids in our public schools. 90% of Kentucky's children go to our public schools. They know the answer isn't to abandon our public school system, isn't to defund our public school system, isn't to provide it less resources. It's to provide them more, to truly make the types of transformational investments that the Rose case required. Yet we've fallen further and further and further behind over the years. We see in every place they've done this, the education for most kids devastated. You don't hear them talking about the data because you were told what the data was today by someone who tracks the data. Now, we should want the best for our kids. And if we want the best, we have to defeat Amendment 2. And let me just finally say that this is not a partisan thing, even if one political party has weighed in on the wrong side of this issue. While I don't believe in red counties or blue counties, I just believe in counties of our Kentucky families. The ones that will be hurt the most would be the ones that would be described as red counties. That this is about what's best for our children and making sure whether you live in the holler, whether you live in Fayette or Jefferson County, if you go to Dawson Springs Independent where my dad got a public school education, first generation college, and became governor, that you can get a great education. That's why we have to defeat Amendment 2 and continue to allow this great constitutional provision that says public dollars are for public schools, period, hard stop, to continue to make sure that we are doing the right thing each and every time. And I appreciate all these educators that are out making sure that people know the truth. Even though a law attempted to silence them and our school system simply for standing up for themselves when a number of private schools are certainly advertising on the other side. Now, in the end of the day, if you're afraid of people knowing the truth, what you're doing isn't the right thing. So, again, I'm here today to make sure everybody hears me loud and clear that we need to defeat Amendment 2. Voting no on Amendment 2 supports our public schools. Voting yes on Amendment 2 would defund our public schools. We got to do this right. We got to stand up for all of our children. Thank you very much. Thank you all for standing up here with me.
We again thank the governor for taking time out to come and share with us for a few minutes on today. Our final speaker today would be Ms. Milan Bush, who's going to come and share with us at this time.
Hello. I don't know many of you, and many of you don't know me, but I do represent the parent sector of what we're talking about today, and that being Amendment 2. As a parent, I want what's best for my child. As a parent, knowing that that my children have diverse skills, diverse gifts, diverse challenges, I know the importance of having resources to meet those needs. As a parent, being privileged to have a child that attended both public and private school, he's in a public school now, I understand the value of choice as well. Today, standing after so many giants, I was very starstruck knowing that I had to speak after the lovely Governor Andy Beshear. So I was like, wow, what else can I say? But as a parent, I just want to really just, again, after hearing from Sawyer and Josh, the numbers are there. 90% of us are in public schools, and defunding that would just be, well, defeating Amendment 2 to stop the defunding of our resources is very important. Not just to me, as I try to tell my kids, like, I want them to be the best that they can be, not just for them, but for others, because they're to be a upstanding citizen in our society. We don't live in silos. So to teach a child how to not just be them for themselves, but be them for others, I have to think about what that modeling looks like. And so that's why I am voting no for Amendment 2. And thank you, and urging my other parents that represent the 90% and also the 10% of private schools, as we are a commonwealth and that we are one. So thank you.
Let's just give all of our speakers a hand together, if you don't mind. All right, our agenda calls for questions and answers. I don't proclaim that I have any answers, but we will take your questions. And while people are here, we can make sure your questions do have an answer for them.
If Amendment 2 passes, there is no limit in what they could take from public schools and send to private schools. Now, I think you'd see a lawsuit about requirements of funding public schools, but the damage would already be done. What you've seen in many other states is unlimited amounts that has hammered the state's budget. And remember, we're right now decreasing our income tax, which certainly sets a ceiling for just how much there is. The state budget has a certain amount, and if you take a big chunk of it out, there's nothing to replace it for our public schools. You're seeing real challenges in other states, and again, the simplest way to put it is it would be absolutely devastating to a public education system that already doesn't have enough. And I thought there's one more myth, falsity, disinformation, misinformation that's on these flyers. They say somehow voting yes would decrease class size. Well, fewer resources, less teachers, bigger class size is exactly what will happen if Amendment 2 goes through. Again, just math.
Are you concerned, you talked about the rural, the smaller counties, let's say Harlan County, for example. Are you concerned that a teacher from Harlan County may get laid off because of this?
Absolutely. No, if Amendment 2 passes, I think we will see either teachers lose their jobs or not being able to fill critical spots that are open. I mean, we have spots that are open that need to be filled by someone of a particular background, but we also still just have too many openings that are out there. You know, those are spots that if we can fill them, we want to. So we would either lose existing teachers or vacancies that we desperately need to fill. But yes, if a school loses the amount of money that it currently has, it cannot support the current staff that it has. That impacts all of our kids. It could mean one less teacher. It could mean one less guidance counselor. It could mean less money for SROs or other security upgrades that have been made. Every dollar that goes into our public schools is so important. And this would mean there's less.
Could you explain how this event was organized today? AFT and the Kentucky Education Association are competing in Fayette County for members now, and I'm sure in other parts of the state. And, of course, KEA has been a stalwart supporter of Governor Beshear.
Well, I just start by saying KEA and AFT are united in opposing Amendment 2. And what you see is both groups trying to get as many people out to vote against it. I do not see any conflict between the two groups that are on this issue. I am happy to stand with my friends at AFT. I'm happy to stand with my friends at KEA. In the end, we just need to defeat Amendment 2 and make sure we don't trip ourselves up in any way as we do it.
Yes.
We are in the midst of doing what is really important for America every 4 years, which is to really talk to voters all across the country. And, so the AFT, you see that bus out there, it says, get out the vote. It's really civic engagement. And we've been on that bus, myself and the other 2 officers of the AFT, from Labor Day through Election Day. This is our 14th state. And we had a roundtable today about the importance of this issue. And, we were with Becky Pringle yesterday in Ohio. So when it comes to these kind of values about what we need to do for our kids, the NEA and the AFT are in the same place. And I'm honored to be here today with these amazing educators and parents and with the amazing governor of your state to actually talk about what the facts are when it comes to Amendment 2.
Becky Pringle, President of NEA.
Thank you. Governor, how concerned are you with the misinformation potentially causing a bunch of confusion on this issue?
Well, I've been talking about misinformation a lot lately, but very concerned. Concerned because if you're going to use misinformation to try to get people to vote, you're not going to do the right thing with the power you get if it passes. But people need to know the truth. And what I'd ask they do is go talk to a public school educator. They'll tell you the truth. They know what's going to happen if this passes. But it's also very important that groups like AFT, groups like KEA, NEA, get the word out as well. You're going to see myself doing that. The Lieutenant Governor has been out there. Those that have fought for public education day in and day out. I personally went to the Supreme Court to fight for the pensions of all of our educators. I think people can see who supported public education and who's telling them the truth and what out-of-state dark money groups are lying to them.
Governor Beshear, where can we find information about the details of Amendment 2 and as well as those that are supporting and those that have proposed it so that the people can make an informed decision of who's going to be reelected and not reelected?
So one of the things that we're doing, particularly since the legislature has limited some people's right to speak, there's lots of people within school systems across Kentucky who would be telling you the truth about what would happen. Like any time, think about it this way. Anytime you see a budget cut in a school, what tends to happen is that the things that kids love the most are the things that get cut first. Sports, art, music, class sizes get increased because, and there's a reason, because there are state and federal standards that say you must have English, you must have math. Not saying that that's bad, but those are the things that get cut. So it's kind of sort of common sense here. But because of all of the misinformation and disinformation, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a 3-week sprint to making sure that there's information out there on the airwaves. And there will be on Kentucky 120 will have, information on their website. And we're going to get information out to the community. It's great. Then part of doing this press conference today is to do that. So you can go to, we'll have a bunch of information after today on Twitter, and there's going to be a bunch of information that the governor is doing and getting out because we need to actually make sure that people know the truth.
Okay. Anything else?
Governor, could Amendment 2 work if the money is pulled from another pot of money?
Well, there isn't another pot of money is the challenge. At the end of the day, our budget funds infrastructure, funds education, funds health care through Medicaid and expanded Medicaid. This isn't magic money that comes from a tree. It's a limited amount of resources that the cuts to the income tax are making even more finite, meaning growth isn't going to make up for them for much longer. Now, I want to be as clear as I can. Amendment 2 would take money away from our public schools and send them to unaccountable private schools. There is not a scenario where that doesn't happen. And if you want examples, remember the legislature tried to pass charter school and charter school funding. They tried to pass the tax break for sending your kids to private schools. All of those in the long run would have meant less money for our public schools, and they will do it again. When somebody is out trying to grab the money and they see the money going to public schools, that's where they're going to try to grab it from. All right, thank you all very much.
How's that drive in today? Good? Lisa and I. Where did you drive from?